Captain Roan shivered as he lay on the cold deck of the exploration ship. His skin felt hot and tight, and each breath came with a sharp stab of pain. The crew had called it a neurotoxin, a poison that spread through his veins like wildfire. They tried every medicine in their stores, but nothing worked. Roan grew weaker. His vision blurred, and his voice came out as a dry whisper. Lieutenant Mara hovered at his side. She pressed a hydrogel pack to his forehead and kept her voice calm. "We have one shot, Captain," she said. "We found a signal. It comes from an uncharted planet. The readings show a complex biosphere. There could be a cure." Roan forced himself to sit up, though his head spun. He trusted Mara more than anyone, but hope felt thin. Yet the pain was worse. He nodded once, and his crew set course for the new world. Outside the viewport, stars streaked past as the ship jumped faster than light. Roan closed his eyes and tried to steady his breath. Each pulse of the engine echoed in his temples. When they dropped out of hyperspace, the planet filled the viewport. It was a bright green jewel against the black. Clouds swirled over forests that glowed with an unearthly light. Rivers shone like silver threads. The sensors showed rich life signs and unusual chemical signatures. Mara looked at Roan. "I'll beam down with the team," she said. "You rest." Roan shook his head. "I want to try," he said. He forced himself to stand. His legs felt like lead, but he held the railing until the nausea passed. He followed Mara and two medics to the shuttle. The airlock cycled open with a hiss, and they stepped onto soft grass. The air was warm and sweet, scented with flowers. Roan gasped as color returned to his cheeks. For a moment, he forgot the poison. They moved toward a grove of tall trees with smooth, pale trunks. Strange vines dangled from branches, and flowers of every hue dotted the ground. The crew scanned for life forms, but there was quiet, no animals. No bird song, only the soft hum of the wind. Then, at the heart of the grove, they saw her, Eris, stood beside a pool of clear water. She was tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like moonlight. Her hair fell in silky waves to her waist, and her eyes held a calm wisdom. She wore simple robes woven from plant fibers. Roan felt a sudden warmth, as if the grove itself welcomed her. Mara stepped forward with the universal greeting. Eris inclined her head. Her voice was soft, yet it carried through the trees. "You come for healing," she said. Her words were clear in Roan's mind, even though she spoke in an unknown tongue. The translators worked instantly. "Our world has a gift," Eris continued. "A milky sap from our sacred vines. It cures any wound, any poison. But you must close your eyes when you receive it. You must trust without seeing." Roan's pulse quickened. He remembered the signal, a distress call encoded in an alien script. He never imagined the cure would come from here. He steadied himself and spoke, "I will trust you." His voice wavered, but he held her gaze. Eris moved to a cluster of vines whose pale fruit oozed a thick white milk. She harvested it in a carved bowl made of living wood. Drops fell like pearls into the vessel. Roan watched, his heart pounding, as she lifted the bowl. Then she looked at him and repeated, "Close your eyes." He glanced at Mara, whose face was firm with hope. Then Roan shut his eyes fully. Darkness spread behind his lids, and he felt the grove's light fade. Eris held the bowl to his lips, and he tasted cool sweetness. The sap slid down his throat and spread warmth through his chest. The pain eased, and he could breathe freely around him. The grove seemed to sigh. Roan felt grass under his palms and heard water trickle in the pool. He did not open his eyes. He knew that if he broke the rule, the bond would end. So he trusted the healer he could not see. Eris's hands rested on his shoulders. Her touch was gentle as a breeze. Roan sensed relief in her presence. Behind closed lids, he felt tears of gratitude. The poison retreated, and strength returned to his limbs. He opened his eyes slowly, expecting to see Eris's face, but the grove was empty. The bowl and vines were gone. Captain Roan stood alone, healed, and filled with wonder. The grove returned to silence, but he carried its gift in his body. He turned toward where Eris had stood, but he found no trace of her. Only footprints that faded at the edge of the trees. He sensed the future waiting. The crew would know a cure existed, but he would remember Eris's rule. To heal, he must trust with his eyes closed. Roan took a deep breath. The poison was gone, and hope was real. The dying star system could be saved if they could find the healer again. With strength in his step and questions in his mind, Captain Roan led his crew back to the shuttle. The grove faded behind them, but its promise carried them home. The journey had just begun. Captain Roan stood at the shuttle ramp and watched the planet fade into the distance. His body felt whole again, the toxin drained from every vein. Lieutenant Mara guided the shuttle toward the main ship, her voice calm but excited. The crew moved quickly to collect samples of the sap residue that remained in the bull's grooves. They stored it in secure biocontainers and ran tests to confirm its purity. Roan leaned against the railing, still recalling the soft touch at his shoulders. Something about the healer's hands spoke of memory and depth he could not yet name. Back aboard the exploration ship, the medical bay became a hive of activity. Doctors and scientists gathered around microscopes, examining the alien milk under bright lights. Instruments beeped as chemical readings registered levels no human medicine could replicate. Mara reported every result to Roan. The compound regenerates damaged cells instantly, she said. It neutralizes the toxin and strengthens the immune system beyond our best estimates. Roan let the words sink in. He thought of the dying star system they had left behind. If this cure could be produced, it might save thousands. Yet Roan's mind returned to Eris. The grove had been empty when he opened his eyes. No bowl, no vines, no healer. Only footprints fading into the earth. He asked Mara for the recordings from his shuttle suit. The logs showed him lying still, eyes closed, as the bowl's contents slipped into his mouth. But there was no image of Eris herself. His suit's camera had recorded only empty air. Roan frowned. The healer must guard her identity for a reason. In the ship's archive room, Roan studied an ancient star chart the planet's sensors had transmitted. Strange symbols marked locations of ruins scattered across the world.
How one symbol matched.
The pattern inscribed on the bowl's living wood said a spiral enclosing 3 lines. The ruins lay deep in a desert beyond the jungles. Roan gathered a small team, Mara, 2 engineers, and the ship's xenolinguist, Dr. Caleb Yen. They would follow the ruins and search for answers about Eris's people. The shuttle touched down. Near a field of wind-swept dunes, beneath layers of sand rose broken pillars and carved stone slabs. Circular doorways lay half-buried. Wind howled through archways as if calling them inside. Dr. Yen traced the spiral symbol with his finger. This was a temple, he said. A place of ritual and binding. The spiral represents life's flow and closing one's sight to become one with the source. Roan listened and felt a chill. Eris had asked him to close his eyes. No, he glimpsed. Why they entered the temple's main chamber. Inside, faded murals covered the walls. They showed figures kneeling before robed beings, eyes shut, hands raised. Light from a crack in the ceiling revealed vines growing through the floor, their pale trunks coiling around broken stone. The engineers filmed every detail. One of them. Engineer Yalin discovered a hidden alcove carved into the wall. Inside lay a sealed urn made of the same living wood as the healing bowl. Mara pried it open. Inside was dried residue of the milk, now powdery. Yen held it up. This was stored. Here, he said. The temple was a source of the cure. Roan examined the alcove carvings. They illustrated a warning. A pair of eyes crossed out over a kneeling figure drinking from a vessel. Beneath, a final panel showed the eyes opening in the figure. Consumed by darkness, Roan's heart thumped. The warning was clear. Never see the healer. Maiden, one of the engineers, spoke up. Does this mean Eris will disappear if we force her to show herself? He asked. Roan nodded slowly. We cannot risk her life for ours. He turned to the team. Become his guests, not conquerors. We seek knowledge, but we must honor her rules. The crew lowered their heads in agreement. Roan felt a new respect for Eris's wisdom. She protected her people's secret with care. That night, Roan reviewed all data in his cabin. The planet's moon hung low outside the viewport, silver light pooling on the deck. He thought of the dying star system's colonists awaiting rescue. He knew the cure could save them. But first, he had to find Eris again, earn her trust. He reached out to communicate through the planet's ancient network. He sent a gentle greeting using the symbols Dr. Yen had translated. The message read, "We honor your gift. Guide us to your healer." Hours passed before an answer came. The message flashed on the ship's console, a single spiral symbol, glowing in pale green. Roan felt a thrill. He summoned Mara and Dr. Yen. "She will see us again," he said. "We must go back to the grove. But this time, we must be patient and respectful." They prepared the shuttle. Roan packed his uniform in the sealed urn of powder. He would bring it to Eris as a sign of their intent to protect the cure. As dawn broke over the dunes, the shuttle lifted off. Roan stood at the cockpit viewport, staring at the planet's surface. The windswept ruins and hidden temples lay behind, but the grove awaited. He remembered Eris's words, "Close your eyes and trust." He clenched the urn in his hand, feeling the promise it held. The shuttle dove into the jungle canopy, and Roan closed his eyes, ready to trust the unseen guide who held the world's greatest gift. Captain Roan led the shuttle through the dense jungle canopy before dawn. The rising sun cast long shadows between ancient trunks, and the air smelled of damp earth and blooming flowers. Lieutenant Mara navigated by the planet's glyph map, while Dr. Caleb Yen monitored the ship's com signal for the spiral symbol. The grove awaited them, but the path was overgrown since their first visit. Roots curled like snakes across the ground. Vines dripped with dew. The shuttle's engines hummed quietly as they landed in a small clearing. Roan stepped onto soft moss and closed his eyes, remembering Eris's rule. He felt the pulse of the living world around him, the heartbeat of trees, the whisper of winds. Mara and Caleb gathered the sealed urn of powdered sap. Roan carried it carefully in both hands as an offering and a plea. They moved forward in single file, boots sinking into the soil. Yalin, the engineer, scanned with a handheld sensor. "The reading spike ahead," she said. "We're close." The group followed the signal until they reached the grove's edge. Pale trunks rose in a circle, and at the center lay a shallow pool reflecting moonlight. Footsteps led from the water's edge into the trees. Roan swallowed and stepped inside. The circle. His heart pounded. The grove seemed empty once more, but he sensed presence. He knelt by the pool and placed the urn on a flat stone. With eyes closed, he whispered, "We honor your gift. Show yourself so we may learn." Silence stretched. Then the ground trembled softly. Vines parted to reveal a narrow path lined with glowing flowers. Though he could not see their glow, Roan felt warmth from their light. The path wound deeper into the trees until it opened into a hidden valley. At its center stood a living sculpture, a towering tree whose branches arched like a cathedral. Its trunk bore carvings of spirals and crossed-out eyes. Mara set down the urn. "This is a temple tree," she said quietly. Eris built it as a sanctuary. Roan nodded, reached out to touch the bark, and felt a gentle throb like the pulse of a heart. Dr. Yen studied the carvings and translated in a hushed voice. "It tells of a bond between healer and patient. You must trust without sight to share life forces." As Roan listened, vines shifted and the air grew still. Then a soft voice spoke from all around. "Captain Roan." Roan's breath caught. He stood and folded his arms, keeping his gaze forward. "Eris," he said, though he could not see her. "We came to learn and to protect your gift," the voice replied. "You honor me with respect. Few outsiders understand the need for trust." Roan felt footsteps on the soft grass. Eris emerged from shadow, clad in robes that shimmered with living patterns. Even without sight, Roan sensed her grace and strength. She carried a polished bowl of living wood, surface alive with veins of pale sap. Mara stepped forward, but Roan raised a hand. "I will speak," he said. "Thank you for guiding us here." He bowed his head. Eris nodded and placed the bowl at his feet. "Today, you will learn more of the ritual," she said. "You have shown you can follow the rule. Now you must." Deep in your bond, Roan knelt before the bowl. Eris extended her hands above him. He felt warmth radiate from her palms. She chanted in her own language, and the air vibrated with gentle power. The bowl glowed from within, and drops of sap fell onto Roan's upturned palms. He tasted its sweetness as before, and felt strength surge. Then Eris's hands settled on his shoulders, steadying him. As the ritual progressed, Roan sensed voices, echoing spirits of the grove responding to the bond. He felt unity with the planet's life force. Memories, not his own, flickered through his mind. Eris's childhood learning the healing craft, the loss of friends to a plague, the solemn vow to protect the cure. He felt grief and hope mingled in his heart. After a time, Eris withdrew her hands. In the sap bowl, the glow faded, and the voices fell silent. Roan opened his eyes slowly, expecting blindness, but the grove remained gentle twilight. Eris had lifted the rule, but only for a moment. Roan realized he had earned a gift, partial sight of her world's magic. He saw vines pulse and flowers breathe, as if alive. Eris spoke again. You have learned more than most. You feel our bond and glimpse our world's power. In return, you must guard the secret. Share the cure, but not the source. Roan bowed deeply. I promise, he said. We will safeguard your people and your gift. Mara placed a hand on his shoulder. Dr. Yen and Yalin nodded in agreement. Eris smiled, though Roan could not see its full light. She touched the bowl once more, and the sap solidified into a gem the size of a stone. Take this, she said. This will guide you when your faith wavers. Roan picked up the living gem and held it tightly. Warmth spread through his fingers. He felt renewed purpose. Eris stepped back into shadow, and the grove's light dimmed. Vines closed the hidden path, and the valley fell silent again. Roan and his team stood alone, changed by what they had witnessed. As they retraced their steps to the shuttle, Roan kept his eyes closed for a moment, remembering trust. Then he opened them and looked at his crew. He saw resolve in their faces. They carried with them not only a cure, but a sacred promise. The journey to save their star system would continue with the bond between human and healer guiding their path. Captain Roan paced the lab's narrow corridor as the ship's engineers worked at benches piled with equipment. The living gem pulsed softly in its containment, sending a warm glow across the metal walls. Roan remembered Eris's warning. Share the cure, but not the source. He touched the gem's surface and felt the promise of healing. Yet he knew the path was not without danger. Lieutenant Mara stood beside a synthesizer, designed to replicate the sap's molecular structure. She keyed in the formula they had translated. From the temple inscriptions, the machine word, lights blinking in sequence. After tense moments, it spat out a small vial of clear liquid. Mara held it up and smiled until the analyzer registered a problem. The compound breaks down too fast, she said. We can't stabilize it for transport, Doctor. Yen frowned at his datapad. The sap's active enzymes rely on the living network of the vines, he explained. Cannot mimic that bond with mere machines. The engineers exchanged uneasy looks. One of them, Maiden, leaned closer to the gem's containment. Can't we extract more from the gem itself? He asked. Roan's heart sank. That night, Roan entered the lab again and found Maiden and another engineer, Yalin, crouched by the gem. They had bypassed the safety locks and tapped into the containment's power supply. Sparks flew as they tried to fracture the gem with a laser cutter. Roan shouted, "Stop!" But the noise drowned his voice. The beam struck the gem, and it cracked, sending a shockwave that threw Roan across the floor. Alarms blared. Mara and Dr. Yen rushed in, finding Roan bruised but alive, and the gem split in two. One half lay dark and dull, the other still faintly glowing. Maiden and Yalin looked guilty. Roan struggled to his feet. You broke our promise, he said, voice low. Eris trusted us. Mara hauled the trespassers away from the containment. You don't understand, Yalin blurted. Could save millions if we mass-produce the cure. Her eyes shone with hope. Dr. Yen shook his head and doomed the healer's world. You risk destroying the source. Roan pressed a hand too. His wounded side. Pain flared. reminding him of his own vulnerability. He took a deep breath. "We came here to help our people," he said. "But we swore to protect Eris's gift. We cannot betray that oath." He looked at Maiden and Yalin. "I'm sorry, but you must be confined until we leave." The crew secured the engineers in a med-bay cell. Ship shuddered as it entered. Orbit above the jungle world. Through the viewport, Roan saw the green canopy and felt guilt for what had happened. He carried the dull half of the gem in his pocket, uncertain if it still held power. That evening, the console flickered with a message. It bore the spiral symbol in pale green. Roan's hands trembled as he opened it. The symbol pulsed once, then vanished. He knew Eris had sensed the breach. He gathered his officers in the briefing room. "Eris knows," he said quietly. "She could cut off the bond entirely."
Allies.
Mara's eyes filled with remorse. Dr. Yen clenched his fists.
I lost you.
"We have one chance to make this right," Roan continued. "We must restore her trust." He assembled a small landing party, himself, Mara, and Dr. Yen. They took the half-gem and the urn of powdered sap. The shuttle descended through twilight clouds. When they landed in the grove's clearing, Roan knelt and held the cracked gem aloft. "We failed you," he whispered. "Please forgive us and guide us again." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then vines stirred at the grove's edge. Soft voice carried on the wind. "You have broken the rule," Eris said, "and endangered the bond." Roan bowed his head. "We know. But we ask for mercy." Eris stepped into view, robes shimmering. She lifted her hand, and the cracked gem floated from Roan's grasp. With a gentle glow, it mended itself seamless whole. Roan gasped as warmth spread through the shard. Eris held it out to him. "Your regret is true," she said. "You honor our gift with your sacrifice." Roan rose and accepted the gem. Its glow steadied his heart. Eris gestured to the powdered sap in the urn. "This too will grow into living vines," she explained. "Your respect feeds the world's heart." Roan poured the powder into a hollow at the tree's roots. The earth trembled, and new shoots burst forth, pale and alive. As the sap pooled around them, Eris spoke. "Take what you need, but leave the source in peace. Remember the bond you share." Roan and his team gathered vials of the fresh sap. They bowed to Eris, whose eyes held both sorrow and hope. The shuttle lifted from the grove as dawn broke. Roan watched the hidden valley recede. In his pocket lay the restored gem, and in his hands the living cure. He turned to Mara and Dr. Yen. "We carry more than medicine," he said. "Carry trust." Back aboard the ship, the medical bay filled with the sap's living vines. The engineers who had tried to break the rules watched in awe as the vines grew. Roan addressed the crew in the corridor. "We honor our promise," he said. "We will heal our people, but we will protect the healer's world." The ship set course for the dying star system. Captain Roan stood at the bridge viewport, the living gem's glow now soft within his uniform. And sacrifice. Cure would save thousands, but the bond would guide them all. The journey to heal a dying world had only just begun. Captain Roan watched the dying star system grow larger on the view screen. The world below was once rich and green, but now its skies were brown, and its seas were poisoned. Whole cities lay silent beneath dust storms. Roan felt a heavy weight. In his chest, he carried the living cure in vials. And the living gem pulsed with gentle light against his uniform. The shuttle touched down on the planet's cracked surface. Heat waves shimmered around the landing pad as the engines powered down. Lieutenant Mara and Dr. Yen joined him at the ramp. Behind them, medics and engineers carried containers of the fresh sap and equipment to distribute it. Roan took a deep breath of the dry air. He knew the moment of truth had come. They moved to the main colony settlement. Broken towers leaned at odd angles, and streets were empty of life. Only a few survivors shuffled beneath torn shelters. Children lay in makeshift beds, pale and fevered. Roan's heart ached. He carried a small vial of cure to a medic kneeling. Beside one child, the medic opened the vial and applied a drop to the child's lips. Within seconds, the child's breathing eased. Color returned to tiny cheeks. The child sat up, eyes wide with wonder. The medic looked to Roan and smiled through tears. "It works," she whispered. Roan nodded, tears stinging his own eyes. Word spread quickly. Soon a long line formed along the ruined boulevard. Roan and his team worked without rest. Each person received a drop of living sap. Some healed instantly. Others required 2 or 3 doses. All of them showed signs of hope. Roan moved among them, offering kindness and reassurance. As twilight fell, Roan returned to the shuttle with empty vials. He glanced at the living gem still glowing softly. It had guided him this far, and he trusted its light. Dr. Yen approached. "We have enough sap left for one final harvest," he said. "After that, we must return to the healer's world," Roan agreed. They could not strip the planet dry. They needed to leave enough sap to regrow. Mara watched the survivors celebrate. As families reunited, she turned to Roan. "You did more than heal wounds," she said. "We gave them hope." Roan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Eris's gift is not just medicine," he said. "It's faith in life." That night, Roan held the living gem in the shuttle cockpit. The planet's moons cast pale light across the hull. He thought of Eris in her silent grove. He wondered if she could see him now, guiding the cure through the dark. Mara joined him and sat quietly by his side. Neither spoke. They shared the moment in silence. The next morning, they prepared for the final harvest. Roan, Mara, and Dr. Yen boarded the shuttle with empty containers. The grove's location glowed in the ship's nav system. When they arrived, the jungle canopy rustled with life. They knelt by the tree that housed Eris's sanctuary. Roan placed the living gem at the tree's base in thanks. The gem's light pulsed once, as if greeting the world's heart binds. Shifted, and part of the trunk opened to reveal pale sap reservoirs. Dr. Yen collected the sap carefully, leaving most of the reserves intact. Mara measured each container, ensuring they would have enough to return to Earth and still leave the grove with what it needed to thrive. Roan watched, feeling both relief and sorrow. Every drop they took was another promise to keep. As they finished, the grove fell silent. Then Eris's voice spoke through the leaves.
"You honor your word,"
she said. Roan bowed his head. "We will protect the source," he promised. "We will share only the cure." Eris's voice softened. "Your people will remember the bond," she said. "May they choose life." The shuttle lifted from the grove and soared above the jungle. Roan watched the tree shrink below until it was a dot of pale green. He tucked the living gem into his uniform and closed his eyes for a moment. He felt gratitude flowed through him like sap. When they returned to the colony, the survivors gathered around the shuttle. Some wept, some cheered, and some knelt in thanks. Roan stepped onto the ramp and addressed them. "Eris's gift is now yours," he said. "Use it wisely. Heal your world, but guard its source. Remember, trust more than fear." The crowd fell silent, then erupted in applause. As they loaded the remaining vials, Roan looked at the children playing in the dust. He saw their laughter and bright eyes. He felt hope for humanity's future. The living gem pulsed in his hand, and he knew the bond would guide them home. The shuttle lifted and headed toward deep space. Roan stood at the cockpit viewport, watching the dying planet fall away. He carried the cure for one world and the promise of renewal for another. The bond between healer and patient would live in their hearts, a quiet light against the dark. The journey to share life had reached its peak, but Roan knew the true test of trust was only just beginning. Captain Roan leaned against the cockpit viewport as the shuttle cruised through quiet space. The living gem glowed softly in his hand, a reminder of the bond he carried. Lieutenant Mara monitored the engine output while Dr. Yen cataloged the final samples of sap. Round them, the ship hummed with calm after the storm of their mission. Roan closed his eyes and pictured Eris's grove, silent and watchful, its roots deep in the planet's heart. He felt gratitude and responsibility in equal measure. Below them, the dying star system waited for healing. The crew prepared the living, sap and automated dispensers, ready to flood the system's worlds with life. Every colony, every settlement would receive the cure they needed. Roan thought of the children he had seen laugh again, the parents who held their families close, and the scientists who would study the promise in each drop. He knew their work would not end with one mission. They must protect the secret of the source. In the mess hall, the crew gathered for a simple meal. None spoke at first. Each carried the weight of what had transpired. Then Mara raised her cup. To Eris, she said softly, and to trust. The others echoed the toast. Roan joined them and looked around the table. He saw determination in every face. They had learned to honor a promise greater than their own needs. They would carry that lesson home. Later in his quarters, Roan wrote, "A report for command." He described the cure, its living nature, and the ritual bond required for its harvest. He omitted the grove's exact location and Eris's people's names. Instead, he wrote of the need to protect their world, to share only what healed and never to seek more than was given. He signed off with a personal note. "We have saved a system, but we have gained wisdom beyond any medicine." As the shuttle approached the edge of the system, comes crackled with life. Colonists reported their healing began at sunrise. Fields once choked with ash now sprouted green shoots. Rivers cleared and fish returned. Roan smiled as he listened to every message. Hope grew louder than static. He shared the news with his crew and they cheered quietly. Mindful of the miracle they held, that night Roan stood alone at the gem containment. He traced the living veins in its wood surface. He remembered the moment Eris repaired the cracked shard and taught him sacrifice. He whispered a silent thanks to the healer he had never truly seen. Then he placed the gem in the ship's archive vault, where it could guide future generations but never be exploited in the days that followed. The crew worked non-stop to distribute the cure. Medics visited every world in orbit, and engineers set up growth farms for the sap's vines. Dr. Yen leads seminars on the ritual's importance, teaching scientists to respect the bond. Mara oversaw transport logistics, ensuring no container was wasted. Roan supervised the operation from the bridge, his eyes always on the living gem's soft glow in the vault indicator. When the last vial was planted in soil and the final workshop closed, the shuttle prepared to depart. Roan gathered his officers. "On the bridge, we have fulfilled our promise," he said. "The system lives again, and Eris's gift remains safe. Let us return home, knowing we honored trust above fear." They nodded, pride in their eyes. The engine spun up, and the shuttle leapt toward the stars. During the journey back to human space, Roan slept little. His dreams carried images of pale vines and silent groves. He woke with questions. How would humanity remember this mission? Would future generations guard the secret or seek to claim it? He resolved to establish a council of guardian scientists, diplomats, and veterans who had shared the bond to ensure Eris's world remained beyond reach, yet always close in spirit. As they crossed the final light years home, a secure channel opened on the bridge comes. A pale green spiral flashed on the screen. Roan glanced at the signal and felt Eris's presence in his bones. He keyed a response using the ritual glyph. The spiral pulsed twice and then disappeared. Roan understood. Forgiveness and trust endured. And Eris watched from afar. When the shuttle docked at Earth Station, Roan stepped onto the observation deck. Crowds had gathered to greet the heroes. Banners read "Welcome Home" and "Life." Restored, Roan felt a swell of emotion as people cheered. He held the thought of Eris's grove in his heart and bowed respectfully. The living gem's glow pulsed in his pocket, a quiet secret between him and the healer. In the months after, Roan chaired the Guardians' Council. They oversaw research into ethical healing, created laws to protect alien worlds, and trained diplomats in the art of trust. The living gem remained in a secure chamber, its wood vessels sealed until such time that the bond could be renewed. Roan visited it often, placing his hand on the glass and remembering Eris's words, "May your people choose life." Years passed, and the dying star system thrived. Children ran through fields once barren, and cities grew beneath clear skies. Roan watched news feeds of harvests and festivals. The living cure became legend, told as a story of hope and respect. Yet few knew the truth, that to heal, one must trust. On the anniversary of their first landing, Roan stood alone under the stars. The living gem in his hand pulsed with gentle light. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Eris." Soft breeze stirred, though they were in space. Roan smiled and opened his eyes, ready to carry that promise forward. The bond between worlds remained unbroken, a testament to the power of trust and to the alien milk that healed a system and awakened humanity's greatest gift,